Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. Today we are looking at Icon issue 7. This issue was written by Dwayne McDuffie and Erica Helene, pencils by MD Bright, inker was Mike Gustovich, and painted color John Brown and Prentice Rollins. Letters Steve Dorado and John Workman. And we pick up where we left off with Raquel and Icon on the pier, and Icon starts to tell her about his story, how he was on a Starliner that malfunctioned, and he was able to get into an escape pod that had enough energy to get to Earth, but it was damaged, and it was even more damaged by the crash. It was able to alter his DNA to match up with a sentient native, who is the woman that found him. And Raquel says, well, why didn't you pick a white guy? And he said, well, it's not a matter of choice. And I'm quoting here, my pod crashed in a cotton field and was found by a plantation slave. My genetic alterations were based on her DNA. And of course, she doesn't believe him. And she gets mad, pulls her mask off, and storms off in a huff, crying. And from there, we diverge into a completely different story. It's now focused on her pregnancy. And she goes to the clinic to verify that she was pregnant. They go over the abortion options, what happens, that sort of thing. It's surprisingly well handled. It's about as even keel as you could get. It does have a little bit of a pro-abortion slant, but it's not as heavy-handed as you would think or come to expect, but it's the crux of the story of this issue. And it's handled pretty well. I was real impressed with that. It wasn't preachy. It wasn't particularly taking one side or another, I don't think. I think it leaned a little bit toward the pro-choice thing, but ultimately she goes to Icon to ask him for money for an abortion, and he says we haven't talked about it, and she gets flustered and upset with him and says, oh, you're going to talk me out of it. And she says how he's not poor, you're not a woman, you don't understand. And he relays that he was once married to a woman named Estelle and that she became pregnant, and this was a very long time ago from what I could tell. It's no date given, but she became pregnant and he didn't know what to do about it. So he took her to his pod and used some of the precious remaining reserve power, quote, to test her, and it was not definitive. He's not a scientist, so he needed the pod's help, but it wasn't very conclusive. But he knew, and I'm quoting here, my artificial genetic matrix would not hold for a second generation. The odds were even higher that the pregnancy would endanger Estelle's life. They terminated the pregnancy, and it shows them being very upset about it, and he's talking about it, and she comes over, and Raquel does, she comes over to him and slaps him, and she says, you're the big rich conservative, you're supposed to make me keep the baby. I want to keep the baby. Women never change apparently. So she's very upset about the whole thing, but she's determined now that she's going to have the baby, and she says she has some things to take care of, then he can lie to her some more about having a spaceship. Now there is a little bit of like the way she structures her sentences. It's told from her perspective in all the caption bars, and there's some intentional bad grammar, but in the end, it's a very positive message about somebody having to make a very difficult decision. So regardless of what that means for her, she's going to have the baby. So it was a very emotional issue, and probably one that would have been more controversial when it came out in the 90s, dealing with abortion, which was a way hotter topic back then. It still sparks a lot of different feelings now, and of course for legitimate reasons. But I thought the issue handled it really well, and it was really good character development for Raquel, and really humanized her quite a bit. She's not an easy character to like in a lot of situations. She's very brash, very impulsive, like a lot of young people, and it really shows a lot of her maturity and character development in this issue, and I think it's probably one of the better issues because of it. And whether you agree with the politics of it or not, kind of an issue that really needs to be read to appreciate the series, and I think Dwayne McDuffie and Erica Helene really did a great job with it and handled a very complex issue with the nuance and respect that it deserved. And I think some of the racial undertones were a little unnecessary, because like she goes into, how he could have chosen to be white, and how black children aren't adopted and things like that. I think that probably could have been cut, but otherwise it handled the issue really well, and it was a really good issue. I would say that I enjoyed it. Could have been a lot worse, a lot more heavy-handed, and a lot less even as far as the balancing of the sides of the issue. So yeah, definitely worth reading. Hopefully the rest of the series holds out to be this good. Looking forward to the next issue, which does address more of his origin. But otherwise, yeah, Icon 7 worth checking out. That'll do it for this one. As always, thanks for watching and supporting the channel, and we hope to see you on the next episode.